This week on World Traveler Cooking, I'm going to make Grybu Kotletai. These are sort of like hamburger patties, but they're made out of mushrooms. So the first thing to note is that within Lithuanian cuisine, mushrooms have a very large place in the fall. And while I'm recording this in the fall and it'll probably go out in the spring, you could use frozen mushrooms, or you could even use champignons, also called button mushrooms from the store, to make this dish. It's a great vegetarian alternative to hamburger patties. You could use them, in fact, as a veggie patty. But typically, in this case, I'm going to serve them Lithuania style with a milk-based sauce. Chantreles have quickly become one of my favorite meat substitutes when making dishes for vegetarians. But again, you could use other kinds of mushrooms instead. I recently did pitapalt. Oh no, sorry, not pitapalt. I did kropkoka with a mushroom filling. And of course, you could use the same techniques I'm going to show you today to make a mushroom filling for cepelinai. So this is actually a really important dish to kind of get the hang of, simply because you can do so many different things with it. You could use this to fill cepelinai, you could make kotletai, you could use these as hamburger patties, veggie burgers, all kinds of things. So, it's a great dish. Not vegan, but it is vegetarian. Certainly not gluten-free. But if you're looking for a homemade veggie patty, this is pretty good. Ingredients we have some bread, and I'll leave it to you to decide how much bread you want to use. Use too little and it won't stick together, use too much, and it may also not stick together, so you may have to play around with it a little bit. I have right here about 200 milliliters of milk. With this much bread, I don't think that's going to be enough. I'll probably have to add more. 2 eggs. I have about a pound, about half a kilogram of chantreles. You could use any other mushroom that's edible, of course. And then I have 6 small onions. It's about 300 grams. 300 grams would be about, I want to say, 8 ounces or so of onions. Then for the sauce, we will have some onions, a little bit of flour, some milk, and some dip. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to break, just like last time, I'm going to break the milk. I'm going to break the bread into small pieces, and I'll soak it in the milk. Then I'm actually going to chop these really fine and set them aside, and I'm going to chop the onion really fine also. One ingredient I didn't bring out was the vegetable oil for cooking. And I expect this to make enough for about 2 people. Okay. Yeah, so pan's pretty hot, so I'm going to add a bit of cooking oil. And you may want to be a little generous on the cooking oil, since we're adding stuff with a lot of surface area. And so then I'm going to start by adding the onions. And I think I'm going to turn this up a little bit. It was at medium, so just a hair above medium. And I'm just going to start cooking this. As soon as the onions start cooking, I will add the mushrooms. So these onions have started to cook down a bit, and they are now turning just a little brown. So I am going to add the mushrooms. And these may release some water too. Depending on the kind of mushrooms you use, the different amounts of water will be released. I don't think chanterelles will release that much. but like button mushrooms would release a lot. So just be aware of that. And we're just going to stir this all together. And we're just going to let it cook for a bit. And as it cooks, I'm going to add some salt and a few lemons. So think of this as kind of like making something kind of like a mushroom duxelle, but this is going to be the base of our patty. So now that this is cooking, we're going to season it. Add some salt, pepper, and add whatever seasonings you like. Most of the things I've seen regarding Lithuanian cooking is to use a single seasoning. So I think today we could use dill, but I think today we're going to use marjoram. Let's just take a generous amount of dried marjoram, and I'm going to sprinkle it on top. Dried marjoram is pretty subtle, so you can use a lot. If you're using fresh marjoram, you'd use very little. And then we're just going to keep stirring this as it cooks down into a paste. And in a few minutes we can taste and adjust. Oops. So this should be pretty good. And I'll be back as this cooks more. So now it's been just lightly sticking to the bottom of the pan here now for maybe 10 minutes. So I think this is about done releasing water. So I'm going to take it off the heat. And we will go ahead and continue on with the patty making process. So I've beaten my 2 eggs here. I'm going to take my bread, squeeze it to see how much liquid comes out, and really not much. If you press it a bit and no liquid comes out, then just don't worry about it. And I'm going to mix this with a fork because I think if I use a whisk, it's just going to get stuck in the whisk. And then we should get something where we have, well, a couple of these pieces are kind of like still. If you have pieces that are really big, you can break them apart, and even take them out. Depends on what you like. But here's our basic mixture, and then once our mushrooms cool a bit, we will start mixing the mushrooms into this mixture. So it's been maybe 20 minutes. And so I'm going to scoop the mushrooms into my egg bread milk mixture, and we'll stir this all together. And you'll see it forms a consistency very much like the meat, Kotletai. I'm going to stir this together. Make sure that we get like a nice mixture like that, and then we can start looking at making our sauce and frying these. Look at how nice this is. These are going to be delicious. Hot pan, cold oil, now it's tripling. It's time to add our Kotletai, so we make patties. We're going to go ahead and put them in. And we're going to cook these on both sides and then we'll come back. At the same time, we're also sauteing the onion up here. This is for the sauce. Once it's sauteed nicely down, then we'll add milk and flour. So I flipped one of these over and I'm going to flip the others over now. You can see how nicely they're browning. And these almost kind of look like meat, but they're not. They're in fact mushroom. It'll be very interesting to see how they taste. So now that the first batch is off, but we now have these onions starting to become translucent. I'm going to let this cook for another minute or so, and then I'm going to add the flour. So the onions are just starting to brown a little bit, so I'm just going to sprinkle a bit of flour on. You don't have to be super precise. I'd target for less than a tablespoon. And then we're going to stir this into the onions, and we're going to let it cook for another minute or so before we start diluting it down with the milk. So now I'm going to start diluting this down with some milk. Finally, when the sauce is looking about right and a little bit, just a little thin, I'm going to stir in some dill and keep it off the heat. Alright, so at this point I'm just going to take some of the sauce. I'm going to ladle it over these kotletai. Then I will garnish them with a little bit more fresh dill. And here are our Grybu kotletai, our mushroom kotletai. Next up, the taste test. And now for the taste test. These are so packed with flavor, it's really hard to explain. The cooking down of the mushrooms just concentrates the flavor. And what you get is this just really thick mushroom flavor. It's wonderful. Definitely something you should try to make. I actually don't taste very much the other seasonings. It's just mushroom flavor. Now, if you find this content interesting, I hope I've earned a like and a subscription from you. Please feel free to check out my Patreon page where you can get early access to many of my new videos. I also, if you make a dish like this, I'd love to hear how you do it differently. Please leave a message in the comments. I think that's just always great to share techniques like that. At any rate, recipes in the description. Bon appetit, and see you next week.